he was just trying to save a woman under attack. How could he have known that the moment he grabbed that sword, the fate of an entire empire would be changed forever? An ordinary geologist, an alien princess, and an ancient weapon that only responds to royal blood. How could a human possibly carry the legacy of a long-lost alien race? And when everything rests on his shoulders, two worlds hanging in the balance, will he have the courage to face his destiny? The roar of jet engines tore through the suffocating atmosphere as Kalen's ship streaked across the alien sky, cutting through clouds tinted the color of molten bronze. He wasn't supposed to be here. This planet's survey was supposed to be a routine mission. Collect some rock samples, analyze the atmosphere, file a report back to Arcturus Station. No one said anything about flying straight into a war zone. Damn it, Kalen mutters as a blast of violet energy grazed the wing of his shuttle, sending it into a violent spin. Control. Do you read me? I'm under attack. Repeat. I am under attack. Only static crackled back. The signal was jammed. He was completely alone. A massive explosion shook the ship. Kalen felt the controls rip from his grip as the shuttle plunged toward the rocky terrain below, spiraling at lethal speed. He gritted his teeth, yanking hard on the stick, trying to stabilize it. But the main thruster was fried. That last blast had crippled the engines. Emergency landing systems. Now he shouted, slamming his fist into the console, which was flashing red with warnings. Parachutes burst from the hull just seconds before the ship slammed into the ground. The impact threw Kalen forward, his head cracked against the dashboard, a sharp burst of pain and then darkness. He came to with blood trickling down his forehead. Stumbling out of the wreckage, he gripped his plasma pistol, a standard-issue tool for all planetary surveyors, though. Almost none of them ever had to use it. Until today, the sounds of battle echoed in the distance, metal clashing voices, screaming pulses of energy ripping through the air. He should have run the other way. Found cover, waited for rescue, but then he heard it. A scream. Not just fear, agony, desperation. A scream for help. Kalen was no soldier. He was a geologist, a scientist, but his conscience wouldn't let him ignore that cry. Without thinking, he ran toward the sound. Heart pounding in his chest, he froze at what he saw. A ruined plaza half collapsed under the weight of war. Buildings with strange alien architecture lay in rubble. In the center, a group of tall, slender figures in black metallic armor surrounded a woman. No, not a woman. A being almost human, but not quite. Her skin shimmered with a pale lavender glow, and her long white hair flowed to her waist like strands of light. Die, Saratha. One of the attackers snarled, his voice warped by a helmet filter. There's no empire left to protect you, Saratha. The woman stood wounded, clutching her bleeding arm, blue blood trickling through her fingers. Beside her lay a strange sword, long, slender, etched with intricate patterns. It looked lifeless, its glow completely gone. I am the last heir of Varoth, she said, voice proud even in the face of death. You may kill me, but the blood blade will find its true successor. The blade dies with you. The soldier growled, raising a blade of his own, some kind of glowing emerald dagger. Kalen didn't think. He moved one blast from his plasma pistol, dropped the attacker with a scream. The others whirled around, momentarily distracted, just enough time for Saratha to dive toward her weapon. Look out, Kalen shouted as another enemy charged dagger poised to strike her back. Kalen tackled him, slamming his fist into the attacker's faceplate. It wasn't strong, but it knocked the enemy off balance. Too many. 3 more closed in fast. Kalen fired twice more. One shot grazed an enemy's shoulder, but it wasn't enough. Take it, Sir, Wraithy yelled, sliding the sword toward him. Use it! Kalen grabbed the hilt on an instinct and the world changed. The blade, cold and dormant just moments ago, erupted with light in his hand. Brilliant blue veins of energy pulsed along its length, crawling up his arm, wrapping around his chest like living flame. He felt it raw, searing power flooding through his veins. He raised the sword and with a single swing, unleashed a shockwave of pure energy. It blasted outward, hurling the attackers off their feet. The one still conscious stared in disbelief. First at the sword, then at him. No, that's impossible, the leader stammered, his voice cracking through the mask. How can a human fall back, another shouted. That's the blood blade. It's awakened. They vanished into smoke and rubble, gone in seconds, leaving Kalen standing there, sword in hand, still glowing like a beacon. He looked at Saratha. She stared back wide-eyed and stunned. It can't be, she whispered, slowly kneeling before him, her expression reverent. The blade has chosen you, before Kalen could ask what that meant. A new voice cut through the air, sharp, furious. "Stand down. Thief of the Bloodblade." Kalen turned to see another warrior approaching. This one was different. His armor gleamed with a regal polish, and his skin, like Saraithi's, was a pale lavender, but his face bore sharp tattoos and his golden eyes burned with rage. "Scylan, stop!" Saraithi called, staggering to her feet. "You don't understand." The Bloodblade awakened in his hand. "It shows him lies." Scylan roared, his weapon still trained on Kalen. "A human. This is a trick. I'll strike him down for defiling Varath's sacred relic." Saraithi stepped between them, arms wide despite the blood still dripping from her wound. "You dare defy the will of the blade. Scylan, look at it. It's glowing at full intensity, the likes of which we haven't seen since King Valthor. This isn't a trick. This is the truth. The Bloodblade has chosen a successor, and it's him." Kalen stood frozen still, trying to make sense of any of this. The sword continued to shine in his grasp, pulsing as if in agreement. Scylan hesitated, slowly lowering his weapon, but suspicion still clouded his face. "If this is true," he said at last, "then everything we know about the prophecy is wrong. The prophesied king is not Varath. He's human." "I'm no king," Kalen said, his voice tight with confusion. "I'm a geologist. I was just here to do a survey when I got shot down." Saraith stepped closer, her tone solemn. "You're more than that now. The Bloodblade awakens for one person only, the rightful heir to the throne of Varath. You've just become emperor of an empire you've never even heard of." Kalen felt his knees weaken. He looked at the sword, then at Saraith, then at Scylan, silently pleading for answers. All he saw in their eyes was belief, unyielding, absolute belief. They were looking at him like he was the last hope of a dying world. Kalen was led into a vast chamber with towering ceilings, where soft blue light shimmered down from glowing crystals suspended in midair. The architecture was a paradox, ancient yet impossibly advanced. Intricately carved stone pillars held up a vaulted ceiling laced with glowing energy veins like pulsing arteries of light. "This is the Royal Council Hall," Saraithi explained. Her wound had been carefully bandaged, or what's left of it after the invasion. Kalen was still holding the Bloodblade, and he'd discovered something unsettling. He couldn't let go of it. He'd tried. The sword felt bound to him by something unseen. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," he said, eyeing the dozen Varath gathered around him. Some stared in awe, others with doubt. A few were already kneeling. "I'm not your king. I'm just a scientist from the Earth Planetary Alliance. This isn't about who you are," Saraith said, her tone solemn. "It's about who the sword chose, and the Bloodblade doesn't make mistakes." An elder stepped forward, his hair silver, his skin a darker violet than the others. "For 5,000 years, the Bloodblade has been the ultimate symbol of power in the Varath Empire. It is not just a weapon, it is the soul of our kingdom, forged from the blood of the first king and sacred metal from our planet's core. And it only glows when held by true royal blood," Scylan added, still watching Kalen with suspicion. "Or by the one foretold." "Foretold," Kalen echoed, his head spinning from the flood of information. "The Varath Empire fell a century ago, Sarayo," he said, her eyes dark with memory. "Traitors allied with the consortium of the Nine Sons and launched a war. The last king, Iathor the Great, sacrificed himself to seal the Bloodblade, ensuring it wouldn't fall into enemy hands. Before he died, he made a prophecy that one day when Varath stood on the brink of extinction, the Bloodblade would awaken for a new heir, a king reborn from death, a light to lead a new era. So don't deny it," Scylan said coldly, his hand resting on his own blade. "If you don't carry royal blood, then you must be the prophesied king. There's no other explanation." Kalen looked down at the sword in his hand. The bright blue glow had softened, but it was still there, like a whisper, like a presence alive. "Your kingdom, it really is about to fall?" he asked quietly, finally grasping the gravity of the situation. "The Nine Sons have surrounded our last surviving world," the elder replied. "What you saw today was just a small kill squad sent to wipe out the last of the royal line. Princess Sarathi is all that remains. They've killed everyone else." Kalen turned to look at her again. She wasn't just some woman he had happened to save. She was the last heir of a dying empire. "We all believed Saraith would be the one to awaken the Bloodblade," another counselor said. "But it never reacted to her. Now we understand why it was waiting. For you," Saraith stepped closer, her eyes unwavering. "By the ancient laws of Varath, the one who awakens the Bloodblade must not only claim the throne, but must also marry the last of the royal line to preserve the royal bloodline. Kaelin's jaw dropped. Wait, Mary, we met an hour ago. This isn't about romance, Scylla cut in his voice like ice. This is about duty. If the Bloodblade truly chose you, then you must obey the law that governs it. Kaelin instinctively stepped back, every part of him screaming to get out of this insane situation. I'm sorry, but I can't do this. I need to contact my station. They're waiting for my report, Tricerathe said gently, her voice laced with sympathy. But I doubt it will work. Kaelin pulled the comm device from his jacket pocket. The screen blinked with a strange message. No signal. Unknown energy field interfering with transmission. That's the royal lattice, the elder explained. When the Bloodblade awakens, it automatically triggers the ancient planetary defense grid. No one can enter or leave until the coronation is complete. You're telling me I'm trapped here? Kaelin asked, panic rising in his chest. Until I become your king and marry her. Not necessarily, Saraith said, her voice calm but firm. You can refuse the crown, but if you do, the Bloodblade will fall silent again. The shield will collapse, and the 9 Suns will finish what they started. A complete genocide. They won't just wipe out the Varath, Scylla added bitterly. They'll strip this planet for every resource it has, like they've done to countless worlds before. That's why we fought them for so long. Kaelin felt a crushing weight settle on his shoulders. He didn't want any of this. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't a king. He'd acted on instinct to save someone in danger. But now, the survival of an entire civilization was riding on him. I understand this is too much, Sarathi said, her voice finally softening. You need time to process it, but time is the one thing we don't have. She pointed to a massive window in the council hall. Through it, Kaelin saw the hulking silhouettes of warships suspended just beyond the atmosphere, held back only by a shimmering energy shield. The lattice is holding them. For now, she said, but they're searching for a way to break through. If they succeed before you decide, we all die, including you. Kaelin looked down at the Bloodblade once more, its glow faint but steady. He could feel the weight of it, not just in his hand, but in his soul. He'd been pulled into a war that wasn't his, and now somehow he'd become the last hope of a fallen empire. I need to think, he whispered. Sarathi nodded. I'll take you to the Chamber of Reflection, but remember, every second that passes, the 9 Suns draw closer. As Kaelin followed her out of the hall, he could feel every Varath eye fixed on him. In his hand, the Bloodblade still shimmered softly, almost as if whispering, I chose you for a reason. Now you must choose, will you embrace your destiny or let an ancient world vanish forever? 3 days had passed since the Bloodblade chose Kaelin, and now the Varath Council had made their decision. They gathered in the Hall of Trials, a massive chamber with soaring ceilings and walls carved with the long, turbulent history of their empire. Kaelin stood at its center, the Bloodblade still fused to his hand like it had become part of his body. We have reached our verdict. Elder Azeron, head of the council, announced, his voice echoing through the stone chamber. The Bloodblade has chosen you but to be recognized as the true king of Varath. You must prove you are worthy. There will be 3 trials, said Elder Lyrian, her voice calm but firm. The trial of combat to test your strength, the trial of wisdom to test your mind, and lastly, the trial of spirit to test the truth of your soul. Kaelin scanned the room, his eyes locking briefly with Sarathi's. Over the last 3 days, she'd helped him adjust to Varath's customs, teaching him their language, their ways. She'd remained formal and guarded, but he'd caught glimpses of something else. Quiet smiles when he surprised her, flickers of warmth beneath the steel. Who will oversee the trials? Kaelin asked, keeping his voice steady, even as his heart pounded in his chest. I will, said Scylla, stepping forward. His tone held the same hard edge it always did. As the last general of the Royal Varath army, it is my duty to ensure no deceit taints this process. Kaelin gave a small nod. He knew Scylla still didn't trust him. For 3 days, the man had watched his every move, waiting for the outsider to fail. The first trial begins now. Azeron declared combat. A true king must defend his people, but I'm not a warrior, Kaelin said. I'm a scientist. The Bloodblade chose you, Scylla replied with the faintest smirk. If it chose well, you'll have no trouble. The massive doors behind the chamber opened, and a towering Varath warrior stepped through in gleaming black armor, wielding a long, brutal sword. Kaelin swallowed hard. The man was nearly a head taller than him and looked like he could snap him in two with his bare hands. This is Calthor, Scylla said. One of our finest living fighters. You don't need to defeat him, just draw blood. Prove you're capable. And if he kills me? Kalen asked, struggling to keep the fear from his voice. Then perhaps the sword made a mistake, Scylla answered bluntly, almost gleeful. Suraith stepped forward, eyes filled with concern. Scylla, this isn't fair. He's never trained with the blood blade. A true king doesn't need training, Scylla snapped. If he's the chosen one, he'll know how to use it. Before Suraith could protest again, Calthor lunged. Kalen barely had time to lift the sword. He tried to recall every sword fight he'd ever seen in a movie, but this was nothing like fiction. The blood blade was lighter than it looked, and as Calthor struck, Kalen felt something else, something guiding him. Calthor's sword came down hard, but the blood blade moved on its own, intercepting the blow. With a sharp clang, Kalen reacted. No, the blade reacted with swift counterstrikes that felt almost instinctual. No way. Scylla whispered, eyes wide with disbelief. The two clashed again and again, and with each passing moment, Kalen grew more confident. It wasn't him fighting, it was the sword channeling the knowledge of warriors who had wielded it before him. Then an opening. Kalen struck, cutting through Calthor's armor at the shoulder, just a small wound. But enough. Calthor stepped back and gave a respectful nod. The trial of combat is complete. Azeron declared. A stunned silence filled the hall. Scylla stood frozen, disbelief etched across his face. Pure luck, the general muttered. But Kalen saw something new in his eyes, doubt beginning to give way. The trial of wisdom took place the next day, and inside the ancient library of the royal palace, Kalen was seated before a strange three-dimensional game board with glowing pieces that hovered in the air. Vareth Zesh Suraitha explained, seeing his confusion. Our oldest strategy game, every ruler must master it. His opponent was an elder with sharp eyes and a stern expression. Thelios, they explained the rules, but the complexity was overwhelming. Kalen barely understood half of it. Good luck, Scylla sneered. Elder Thelios hasn't lost in over 50 years. As the game began, Kalen fumbled through the first few moves, but then, like with the sword, something clicked. It was as if memories, not his own, whispered suggestions into his mind. Moves appeared like flashes of intuition. 2 tense hours passed, and to everyone's shock, Kalen won. Impossible, Thelios breathed. You played just like King Iathor. The same patterns, the same instincts. He cheated? Scylla snapped. He had to. Or Suraith. He said firmly, it's more proof that the Bloodblade chose true. In the days leading up to the final trial, Kalen spent his time immersed in Vareth culture. Suraith walked with him through the remnants of the palace, sharing stories of their lost golden age, once the greatest civilization in the galaxy, before betrayal brought it all crashing down. Why did the 9 Sons attack your people? Kalen asked, stopping before a mural of their last great battle. For the life source, Suraith said, pain darkening her voice. An ancient energy, buried deep within Vareth's core. It powered the Bloodblade and all our sacred weapons. The consortium wanted to weaponize it. Our ancestors refused, so they declared war. And now they're close to winning, Kalen asked softly. Suraith nodded, then suddenly reached out gently, taking his hand. That's why your arrival matters so much. You're our last hope. Kalen looked down at her pale violet fingers wrapped around his. Her skin was cool to the touch, but not unpleasant, and somewhere inside, something stirred. The distance between them had begun to shift. The formal walls were cracking. He saw not just a princess, but a person, one who carried unbearable weight and still had hope. I don't know if I can be the king your people need, Kalen said quietly. I'm still just me, a scientist from Earth, not an emperor. But you're changing, Suraith said gently. I see it the way you carry the sword, the way you speak to the council. You're not the same man who fell from the sky. And she was right. Kalen felt the shift. He was stronger now, more certain, and sometimes he dreamed strange memories that were in his battlefields. Coronations, faces of long-dead kings. Why me? He asked, staring into her eyes. Why did the sword choose me? That's what the final trial will reveal, Suraith replied. The trial of spirit, you'll face yourself, and every king who came before you. That night, as Kalen returned to his chamber, he found Scylla waiting outside. You've passed 2 trials, the general said. No sarcasm, no smirk. But that doesn't mean I trust you. I don't need your trust, Kalen replied. I need your help to protect your people. You don't get it. Scylla stepped closer, voice dropping. Vareth isn't just a kingdom, it's a responsibility. If the Nine Sons get the life source, they'll turn it into a weapon that could wipe out thousands of worlds, including Earth. Kalen felt a chill run down his spine. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand what's really at stake before you enter that last trial, Scylla said. And because I'm starting to believe maybe the sword didn't choose wrong after all. With that, the general turned and walked away, leaving Kalen alone in the corridor, sword in hand. He looked down at the glowing blade, its soft blue light pulsing like a heartbeat. Why did you choose me? He whispered. Who am I really? And in the silence that followed, he could almost feel the sword tremble, as if answering back, you'll know soon enough. The trial of spirit was held in the deepest chamber of the Varath Palace, the Chamber of Mind. As Kalen stepped inside, he couldn't help but pause in awe. The room was perfectly circular and utterly dark except for a glowing ring at its center and faintly luminous crystals suspended high above, casting a soft blue light that made it feel like he was standing in the middle of the cosmos. Saratha Scylla and the rest of the Varath Council were already there, standing in a solemn circle around the center. Their expressions were grave. Tense, the final trial. Elder Azeron spoke, his voice deep and steady, is the most difficult of all. A king requires not just strength and wisdom, but a worthy soul. You will now face the mind of the ancients, the collective consciousness of every Varath king who has ever lived. What you see will be absolute truth, Turu. He warned, her eyes filled with concern. There is no lying in the Chamber of Mind. Nothing can be hidden here. And if you're not the chosen one, Scylla added, it will tear your mind apart. Kalen swallowed hard. But there was no turning back now. After everything he'd seen, after everything he'd learned about the Varath people, their history, their fall, he felt the weight of their hope. Not because the sword had chosen him, but because he'd seen with his own eyes what they stood to lose. I'm ready, he said, stepping into the ring of light. Place the blood blade on the altar. Azeron instructed, pointing to a low stone pedestal at the center. Kalen laid the sword down. Instantly, the blade erupted in light, flooding the chamber. He felt something pulling him, like being yanked through a vortex of color, his mind detached from his body. When his eyes opened again, Kalen stood in a space that defied reality. An endless void filled with swirling ribbons of colored light that moved like rivers in the sky. Standing before him was a tall figure, skin a pale lavender, glowing markings on his face, clad in regal golden armor with a simple but dignified crown. Welcome, son of two worlds, the man said, his voice echoing from every direction. I am Iathor, last king of Vareth, and I've waited a very long time for you. How could you possibly know? I'd come, Kalen asked, still reeling. Because I sent you? Iathor replied with a quiet smile. Or more precisely, I set in motion the events that made you possible. The world around them shifted. Kalen now stood inside a high-tech laboratory, its design a strange blend of futuristic and ancient Vareth. Scientists worked on DNA samples under glowing scanners. A century ago, Iathor continued, when the consortium of the Nine Sons began their war of extermination. I knew Varath couldn't survive on weapons alone. We needed a legacy, a plan that would outlive time itself. The vision changed again, now showing a small Varath ship hurtling toward Earth. I sent covert agents to Earth carrying royal Varath DNA. That DNA was seeded into carefully selected human families, those genetically compatible with our bloodline. Kalen stood frozen. One of those families, Iathor said, was yours. Your great-grandfather was among the chosen. Our blood runs through your veins dormant, all this time waiting for the moment to awaken. So that's why the Bloodblade chose me, Kalen whispered. I am of Varath, royal blood. More than that, Iathor said. You are my direct descendant, Kalen. My great-grandson, born on another world, but still a Varath. Kalen's knees almost gave way. But why me? Surely there were others with the same bloodline. There were, Iathor admitted, but only one was chosen because among all the descendants, only you possess both a human heart and a Varath soul. Only you can understand both worlds. Only you can bridge them. The light shifted again. Now Kalen stood beside a glowing river flowing faster and faster. Thousands of faces emerged from the current, former Vareth kings, each one radiating wisdom, memory, presence. We fight not just to preserve our people, Iathor said, his voice now joined by the chorus of ancient voices. We fight to preserve the galaxy, including Earth. The Nine Sons won't stop at Vareth. They'll use the life source to create weapons that could enslave entire star systems. You can walk away, the voices said. You have that right, but know this, if you do, Varath will fall and Earth will be next. Kalen felt the weight of it all pressing down on his chest. It wasn't just about some distant empire anymore. It was about home. I'd have to give up everything. He whispered, my life, my work, my name. And in return, Iathor said, you will save 2 worlds and you will discover who you truly are. You are not just Kalen the scientist. You are the last prince of Varath, born on another planet, sent to return when our people needed you most. The river of light began to swirl faster around him, and Kalen felt it, an overwhelming tide of memories and knowledge crashing into his mind. Thousands of lives, battles, rituals, visions, the collective soul of an ancient civilization. This is your legacy, the chorus whispered. This is your burden. Choose son of 2 worlds. And in that moment of absolute clarity, Kalen knew this wasn't coincidence. He hadn't just fallen from the sky. He hadn't just stumbled across Suraith. This was destiny, set in motion generations ago. I accept, he said, his voice steady. I accept my legacy. I accept my responsibility. The light exploded around him, blinding and warm. He felt himself changing, the Varath genes within him fully awakening, merging with his human identity into something new, something whole. When Kalen opened his eyes, he was back in the chamber of mind, but everything had changed. He could feel more, see more. His skin glowed faintly in delicate glowing lines, royal Varath markings now traced across his arms and wrists. He has returned. Suraith whispered, her eyes wide with awe. I don't believe it. Syllan shook his head, dropping to one knee. You really are. The son of Iathor, Kalen said, his voice now deeper, more resonant, not by birth, but by legacy. Born of Earth, heir to Varath. Hidden for a century to protect the Empire's final hope. He reached for the Bloodblade. It lit up brighter than ever, its power flooding the room in waves, but the moment was cut short. A blaring alarm echoed through the palace. What's happening? Kalen demanded, gripping the sword. The shield, Syllan said, face pale. It's under attack. The consortium has found us. They rushed to the control chamber. On the massive screen, hundreds of warships filled the sky just beyond Varath's atmosphere. Pulses of concentrated energy struck the barrier repeatedly. It was holding but weakening. We detected a surge from the Bloodblade, a technician reported. That's when the shield reached maximum power, but also when our location was exposed. They know Varath is awakening. Suraith said, fear creeping into her voice. And they won't stop until we're ashes. Kalen stared at the screen. The enemy fleet was mobilizing, preparing for a final strike. And in his mind, the memories of kings past, whispered strategies, truths, dangers. The shield won't hold much longer, he said, analyzing the data. We need a counterattack. We don't have the ships, Syllan said bitterly. Most of the fleet was destroyed years ago. Kalen was silent for a moment. Then something not from him, but from the voices within surfaced. There's something else, he said quietly, looking at the sword. Something older, more powerful than any fleet, the Celestial Forge. Suraith. Whispered, eyes wide, but it's been forbidden for millennia, too dangerous, too uncontrollable. And that's why we need it now, Kalen said, resolve burning in his voice. We have no other choice. He turned to the Varath gathered around him now. No longer skeptics, but believers. I may not be a king in the traditional sense, he said, but I am the bridge between 2 worlds, and now I will do whatever it takes to protect them both. The Bloodblade flared in his hand as if roaring in agreement, and beyond the skies of Varath, the enemy closed in. There was no time left to hesitate. Kalen stood tall, the Bloodblade glowing in his hand as he faced the members of the Varath Council. The glowing lines across his skin were now fully formed like rivers of light beneath the surface. His Varath heritage had fully awakened. I, Kalen, descendant of King Iathor, hereby accept my destiny, he declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. Not because it was written in prophecy, but because I choose it. I choose to stand with you. I choose to defend Varath, Suraith, step Beatbarswerun, her eyes glowing with pride and emotion. According to the ancient laws of Varath, the heir to the throne must perform the blood oath with the last living royal. I, Princess Surath, bearer of the final line of Varathian royalty, am ready. Azuron approached, carrying a silver bowl engraved with intricate ancestral sigils. The blood oath will bind you not just in marriage, but in fate. It will complete the awakening of the Bloodblade and unlock the power of the Celestial Forge. Kalen nodded, eyes locked with Suraith's. In the past days, their bond had deepened, not just through duty or survival, but through something real, something earned. "I'm ready," he said. As alarms blared and the screens behind them displayed enemy ships breaching the atmosphere, Kaelin and Sarathi knelt facing each other. Azeron placed the bowl between them. Sarathi gently ran the blood blade across her palm, letting her blue Varathian blood drip into the bowl. "With my blood, I bind my fate to yours," she said, her voice steady and powerful. Kaelin followed. His blood now shimmered with streaks of blue, Varoth and Earth flowing as one as it joined hers in the bowl. "With my blood, I bind my fate to yours," he repeated. The moment their blood mixed, light exploded from the bowl, encircling them both. Kaelin felt a surge, an unbreakable link forming between them. He could feel her pain, her hope, and she could feel him. "The blood oath is complete," Azeron declared. "You are now one king and queen of Varoth." But there was no time for coronation. A violent shockwave rocked the palace. The defense grid was cracking. "They're breaching the shield," Syllan shouted. "We have minutes at best." Kaelin arose, the blood blade now pulsing brighter than ever. Through the bond, he felt Sarathi's knowledge of the Celestial Forge, an ancient weapon powered by the life source capable of releasing an energy burst strong enough to wipe out an entire fleet. "We need to get to the Forge Tower," Sarathi said, already reading his thoughts. They raced through the palace's ancient corridors, ascending to its highest point, a spire piercing the clouds. From there, Kaelin saw all of Varoth, a once glorious city now scarred by war. "What's the plan?" Syllan asked as they reached the tower's summit. "I activate the Celestial Forge," Kaelin said, stepping to the center platform where a narrow slot waited, seemingly forged for the blood blade. "But it's a weapon of mass destruction," Syllan protested. "It could take out the enemy fleet, but it could also devastate our own planet. Not if it's wielded properly," Sarathi said, stepping beside Kaelin. "With the blood oath, we can control it together." Another blast rocked the tower. On the monitors, the last layer of the planetary shield shattered. Enemy warships surged into the atmosphere, headed straight for the palace. "No more time," Kaelin said. He turned to Sarathi. "Ready?" She nodded. Together, they grasped the blood blade and placed it into the slot. The tower came alive. Ancient veins of energy lit up beneath their feet. The Celestial Forge awakened Celestial Forge. Kaelin and Sarathi shouted in unison, their voices amplified, fused. From the peak of the tower, a beam of light shot into the sky, piercing the enemy fleet. But it didn't just destroy blindly. The light fragmented, splitting into hundreds of precision beams. Each one found its mark. Enemy command ships, weapons, platforms. All while sparing civilian zones. "Incredible," Syllan whispered, watching controlled devastation unfold. "No one's ever wielded the Forge with such precision." Through their link, Kaelin and Sarathi guided the Forge not with brute force, but with will. They struck hard, but protected the innocent. But the price was steep. The Forge drained their energy fast, especially Kaelin, who was still adjusting to his awakened Varathian genes. "I don't know how long I can hold this," Kaelin gasped, trembling from the strain. "We have to," Sarathi said, gripping his hand tighter. "This is our only chance." Then one ship broke formation. A single vessel tore through the chaos, heading straight for the tower. "A suicide ship," Syllan shouted, raising his weapon. "They're going for the Forge." Kaelin and Sarathi couldn't move. They had to maintain focus. If the ship hit the tower, it was over. Without hesitation, Syllan charged forward. For Varoth, he roared, unleashing a barrage of energy blasts. It wasn't enough to destroy the ship, but it was enough to push it off course. Instead of hitting the tower, it slammed into a nearby palace wing, the explosion shaking the entire spire. A massive shard of debris hurled toward Kaelin. He couldn't move. He braced for impact, but it never came. When he opened his eyes, Syllan stood before him, his body shielding Kaelin. "Syllan." Kaelin cried out, but he couldn't leave the sword. "Keep going, Your Majesty." The old general whispered, blood soaking his armor. "I was wrong about you. You are the king Varoth needs." And with those final words, Syllan collapsed. Rage and grief surged through Kaelin. He poured every ounce of himself into the forge. The beam intensified. It sliced through the enemy's flagship, obliterating the entire command network. Leaderless, the remaining fleet scattered within minutes. The skies above Varoth were clear. The forge dimmed Kaelin, and Sarathi collapsed to their knees, drained. He crawled towards Syllan, but the general was gone. His lifeless eyes stared toward the sky he had died protecting. "He didn't trust me," Kaelin said, voice thick with emotion. "Not until the very end. But in the end, He saw you, Saraith, he said softly, placing a hand on Kaelin's shoulder. A king willing to give everything for his people, a man worthy of loyalty. Kaelin looked down at the city below. Thousands of Varathians had gathered, looking up at the tower with awe and hope. Many were kneeling. We won, Saraith, he whispered. Varath lives, Kaelin nodded. But he knew this was only the beginning. Now we rebuild, he said. Not just for Varath, but for everyone on Earth and across the galaxy. Anyone who'd be next if we failed. He stood the blood blade now glowing with calm, steady light. With Saraith beside him, he gazed toward the horizon where the first rays of dawn broke through the clouds, the first sunrise of a new era. From this day forward, Kaelin declared, we will not just survive. We will forge a new future where Earth and Varath are no longer strangers, but allies standing together against threats like the Nine Suns. Saraith, he took his hand, her eyes shining with conviction, and we'll do it together. Above them, the planetary shield reignited, not as a prison, but as a beacon, a signal to the stars that Varath had returned, stronger, united, and led by a king born of two worlds. A year had passed since the Battle of the Celestial Forge, the name the people of Varath had given to the day the Nine Suns attacked, and their unlikely new king led them to victory. The palace had been rebuilt, but it didn't look like it once did. Gone were the cold, towering walls of metal. In their place, hanging gardens, lush ecosystems where Earth flora and Varathian flora grew side by side, thriving in harmony. In the Grand Council Hall, the circle of elders had expanded. Now it included ambassadors from Earth and distant planets. Civilizations once terrified of the Nine Suns, now united under the protection of a new coalition. The Stellar Accord. At the center stood Kaelin now, King Kaelin Varath first. He didn't wear the heavy royal armor of past kings. Instead, he wore a sleek fusion of Earth and Varath, design a symbol of who he truly was. His skin had taken on a soft lavender hue, with radiant lines of light tracing along his arms, the full awakening of his Varathian bloodline. The Nine Suns have withdrawn from 3 of our border systems, Kaelin declared, voice firm, eyes sweeping the room. This is not just a victory for Varath, but for all of us. But this is only the beginning. We cannot live in constant defense. We must build an alliance so strong that no power would dare to challenge us again. Beside him stood Queen Saraith, her beauty even more luminous, with her rounded belly gently showing. Through their blood oath, Kaelin could feel her peace, her joy, in the gentle stirrings of their child growing within her. The Stellar Accord will not be an empire, Saraith continued. It won't be ruled by fear or dominance, but built on mutual respect. Not a hierarchy, but a pact between equals. For the past year, Kaelin and Saraith had worked tirelessly to turn that vision into reality. They'd sent envoys to Earth revealing Varath's existence and the looming threat of the Nine Suns. At first, they were met with fear and skepticism, but Kaelin, uniquely born of both worlds, won trust step by step. After the meeting, they retreated to their private garden overlooking the newly restored city of Varath. Saraith gently cradled her belly, smiling as she felt the baby kick. Our child will be the firstborn of a true union between Earth and Varath, she said, pride in her voice. Not through genetic engineering like your ancestors, but through love, through choice. Kaelin placed his hand on her belly, feeling the tiny life within. They'll carry the hopes of 2 worlds. Have you thought of a name, she asked, resting her head on his shoulder. If it's a boy, what do you think of Aelin? A blend of Iathor and Alan, my grandfather back on Earth. Saraith smiled. And if it's a girl, Lyra, like the guiding star between galaxies. They sat quietly for a moment, gazing at the sky ships from a dozen worlds coming and going. Varath was no longer a fortress surrounded by enemies. It had become a beacon. I never imagined my life would lead here, Kaelin said, watching the skyline. A geologist, now king of an alien empire. And I never imagined I'd fall in love with someone from Earth. Saraith laughed softly. Life is strange and beautiful. But their peace was interrupted by the arrival of Kaelin, who had succeeded to HFYLegendsOfZang as Varath's military commander. Your Majesty, he said with a bow. The Celestial Forge was heavily damaged during the battle. Our engineers say it can't be repaired. Kaelin nodded. Deep down, the memories of past kings had told him this would happen. The Celestial Forge was never meant to be a permanent weapon, only a last resort. Maybe that's for the best, he said quietly. A weapon like that has no place in the peaceful era we're trying to build. But we still need defense, Saraith reminded him gently. The 9 sons have retreated, but they are far from defeated, Kalen thought for a moment. Then an idea sparked in his mind, one not entirely his own, but drawn from the wisdom passed down to him. Kalen summoned the finest smiths of Varath and contact the earth engineers we brought here last month. I have a plan. 3 months later, in the royal foundry, a massive blueprint lay spread across a grand table. Surrounding it, master artisans from Varath, brilliant minds from Earth, and engineers from other member worlds of the Accord. This won't be a sword of destruction, Kalen explained, pointing to the design. It'll be a sword of protection, not a weapon to strike fear, but a shield to inspire hope. The blueprint depicted a new kind of blade, forged not from royal blood or sacrifice like the blood blade, but from a fusion of earth science and Varathian magic, a weapon that could project a shield large enough to protect the entire stellar Accord, without the cataclysmic risk of the celestial forge. We'll call it the Unity Blade, Sarathi said gently, rocking their newborn daughter in her arms. Lyra, the first child of both thrones. Her skin shimmered with a blend of soft lavender and earth-toned pink. Her eyes held the deep ocean blue of her father and the silver glow of her mother. A sword that belongs not to Varath, but to all of us, Kalen added. Forged with metals from every planet in our Accord, empowered by the wisdom of every civilization here. Over the next 6 months, the Unity Blade took shape. Unlike the Blood Blade, it required no royal blood to activate. Instead, it responded to intention, to the collective presence of the Council. A symbol of shared power, not inherited power. And then on the 2nd anniversary of the Battle of the Celestial Forge, the Unity Blade was completed. At a solemn ceremony attended by delegates from dozens of worlds, Kalen and Sarathi raised the blade together. Kalen's right hand, Sarathi's left, and little Lyra nestled safely between them in the arms of her caretaker. With this sword, Kalen proclaimed, we forge not war, but peace, not conquest, but protection. Not for one kingdom, but for every star. As they raised it high, the blade shimmered, not with a single color like the blood blade, but with a prismatic light, a spectrum representing each world in the Accord. From the sword, a faint network of light rippled outward, weaving across the night sky like a celestial net, a shield not seen but felt, a promise. This isn't the end of our story, Sarathi said, locking eyes with Kalen, love radiating from her. It's the beginning of a new chapter, Kalen nodded, turning toward their daughter Lyra, child of 2 thrones, living symbol of unity, and in her bright eyes he saw it, a future where civilizations no longer feared one another, where differences were celebrated, not feared, where the stars were no longer divided by borders, but connected by trust. And that, he said with a smile, gazing at the night sky where thousands of stars now represented allies, not enemies, will be a story worth telling. The ancient blood blade, now at rest enshrined in the Hall of Memory, had fulfilled its purpose. It had found the last king of Varath, a king who would not rule by force, but by wisdom, by compassion. And for Kalen, the man who was once just a geologist from Earth, this was only the beginning of the greatest journey of all, forging a future where no empire threatens the stars, and every world has a place among them. And so a scientist by pure chance became the king the galaxy never knew it needed. Not because of destiny, but because of a choice made from the heart, a man caught between 2 worlds, now standing as the bridge that would carry both into the future. The story of Kalen and Sarathi isn't just a tale of love that transcends the stars. It's a reminder that sometimes the greatest destinies are born from the smallest moments, like reaching out to grab a sword in defense of someone else. If you enjoyed this journey through a universe where humanity plays a far greater role than anyone imagined, make sure to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss what comes next. What kind of king do you think Kalen will become? And what powers might Princess Lyra inherit as the first child of 2 united worlds? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you believe that the greatest heroes often come from the most unexpected places, give this video a like to help others find this story. We'll see you in the next episode, where the line between science fiction and truth is as thin as the veil between stars.